We need that for your sister's Maldives trip, my mother hissed after stealing $25,000 from my card. I canceled it immediately. Now they're facing fraud charges. I'm 25, independent and hardworking. I pay my bills, make smart financial decisions, and do my best to stay on top of things. I've been this way since I was a teenager, partly by necessity and partly because that's just who I am. My parents never had to worry about me. I was always the easy child, the one who didn't cause problems. I got good grades without being reminded, worked part-time jobs throughout high school, paid for my own car insurance, and even contributed to household expenses when money was tight. Then there's my sister, Emily, who's 21. She's spoiled, entitled, and has never had to work for anything in her life. Our parents have always treated her like she could do no wrong, and I've always been the responsible one, the one who gets overlooked and taken for granted. This dynamic started early. When we were kids, Emily would throw tantrums if she didn't get what she wanted, while I learned quickly that the path of least resistance was to just be agreeable. By the time I was 10, the pattern was set. Emily got new clothes, the latest toys, and constant attention. I got practical gifts, praise only when I achieved something significant, and was often told to be the bigger person when conflicts arose between us. High school only amplified the differences in how we were treated. When I needed a laptop for schoolwork, I saved up for months working at a local grocery store. When Emily wanted the same laptop 2 years later, not for schoolwork, but because it was cute, our parents bought it without hesitation. By college, I was completely self-sufficient. I worked 2 jobs while maintaining a 3.8 GPA, paid my own tuition through scholarships and student loans, and even sent money home occasionally when my parents hinted they were struggling. Meanwhile, Emily dropped out after 1 semester because college wasn't her thing, but our parents didn't bat an eye. Instead, they let her live at home rent-free while she found herself. She cycled through minimum wage jobs, never lasting more than a few months at any of them, but always had the latest iPhone and designer clothes. 2 years ago, when my parents' car was about to be repossessed, I stepped in. They called me crying, saying they couldn't make the payments and needed help. Just until we get back on our feet, they promised. So I added their car loan to my monthly expenses, another $350 that I really couldn't afford but somehow managed to pay. I never saw a cent of that money returned, but I told myself it was the right thing to do. Family helps family, right? But this time, they went too far. I never expected the bombshell that came one day when I checked my credit card statement. What I found left me reeling and questioning everything I thought I knew about my family. It all started with a routine check of my credit card balance one morning. I rarely used the card, so I expected to see a small amount on the statement. I kept it mainly for emergencies and to build my credit score, preferring to pay for most things with my debit card, but what I found made my heart stop. A pending charge for $25,000 was staring back at me. My mind raced as I clicked on the details of the transaction. The charge was from a luxury travel agency, which only made sense when I thought about my younger sister Emily's obsession with extravagant vacations. Emily had been posting on Instagram for weeks about her dream trip to the Maldives, overwater bungalows, private butlers, seaplane transfers, the works. I'd rolled my eyes at her posts, knowing there was no way she could afford such an extravagant trip on her meager and inconsistent income. I'd assumed she was just daydreaming the way she often did about things she couldn't have. But this was different. This wasn't just an expense. This was an outrageous amount. I knew I hadn't spent that money, so someone had been trying to use my card without my permission. My parents, who had access to my credit card for emergencies, seemed like the only suspects. I'd given them the card information during a family emergency 2 years ago when my dad needed an urgent dental procedure and their credit was maxed out. I'd never imagined they'd keep the information or use it without asking me, but this wasn't just a small transaction. This was something far worse. They had tried to use my hard-earned money to fund Emily's lavish trip. In a haze of confusion and anger, I immediately called my credit card company. After verifying my identity, I told them to cancel the transaction immediately and freeze my card to prevent further unauthorized charges. The customer service representative sounded alarmed. "Do you want to report this as fraud?" she asked. The question made me pause. It was fraud technically, but could I really report my own parents? "Let me handle it my way first," I replied, throat tight with emotion. They were efficient, but my mind was far from settled. I was furious. My own parents had tried to steal from me, and for what? To fund my sister's spoiled lifestyle. As I was still processing this, my phone pinged with a message from Emily. My stomach churned as I opened it. There was a selfie of her wearing oversized sunglasses and a floppy hat, clearly in shopping mode for her trip. "Getting my vacation wardrobe ready, so excited for the Maldives next week. Sucks you can't afford nice trips like this. Maybe someday when you're not so boring and actually live a little." Her message only made the fire inside me burn hotter. The audacity of her message, the casual cruelty of her words. It was all too much. She had no idea what had just happened. She had no idea that her trip had been canceled by me, and she certainly had no clue that her dream vacation was being funded by stealing from the very sister she was mocking. I stayed silent, letting her think everything was fine, but I knew that I couldn't keep this quiet for long. The moment my parents realized what I had done, I knew they would explode. It didn't take long before the storm hit. 15 minutes later, my mom called me, shrieking in anger. The travel agency had informed her that the payment had been declined. My sister's vacation plans were ruined, and of course she immediately blamed me. Not once did she acknowledge what she'd done, using my credit card without permission. In her mind, I was the villain for stopping her. I answered the phone calmly, though my blood was boiling. "What happened?" I asked innocently, buying myself a moment to collect my thoughts. "You canceled the payment," she screamed, her voice so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "Emily's trip is ruined. She's devastated. How could you do this to your own sister?" "Oh, that?" I responded nonchalantly. "Yeah, I canceled my credit card." "What do you mean you canceled it?" she demanded. "We needed that for Emily's trip. She's been looking forward to this for months." I could hear the panic in her voice, and it felt strangely satisfying. For once, I wasn't rushing to fix a problem they'd created. "Why were you even using my card?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. There was silence on the other end. Then my mom stammered out a weak excuse: "We were going to pay you back." I laughed bitterly. "Oh, really? When? With what money?" The absurdity of her claim was almost comical. They'd never paid back any money they'd borrowed from me, not even when they explicitly promised to do so. The car loan I was still paying was evidence enough of that. Then came the guilt trip, the manipulation that I was so used to. "We did this for Emily. She deserves this trip. You know how hard she's had it lately." My mother's voice took on that familiar wheedling tone she used whenever she wanted something from me. "Hard, Emily?" I nearly choked on the irony. My sister had never had a hard day in her life. Last month, she'd quit her part-time job at a boutique because her manager had asked her to work a Saturday shift. The month before that, she'd totaled her car while texting and driving, and our parents had immediately replaced it without so much as a lecture about responsibility. At this point, my father's voice came into the conversation, his anger growing by the second. He must have grabbed the phone from my mother. "Sophia, you better fix this right now." His tone was the one he'd used when we were children, the one that brooked no argument and expected immediate compliance. But I wasn't a child anymore, and I wasn't going to back down. "Fix it? Fix what exactly? The fact that you stole my credit card information? The fact that you were going to spend $25,000 of my money without even asking me?" My voice was rising now, anger finally breaking through my carefully constructed calm. I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Oh, I'm the one who has to fix everything, right? You've been stealing from me, using my money for a vacation, and now you expect me to just let it go." They didn't have an answer, but my mom didn't give up easily. "We raised you, we gave you everything, and now the one time we ask for help, you treat us like criminals." "Ask for help?" I nearly screamed the words. "You didn't ask, you took, and this isn't the one time, it's every time. I'm paying for your car, I paid for Dad's dental work, I helped with the mortgage last Christmas. When does it end?" The argument escalated, and I could feel the years of resentment bubbling to the surface. This wasn't just about $25,000. It was about everything: the manipulation, the favoritism, the constant expectations that I would pick up the slack for everyone else. "That's not fair," my mother protested weakly. "We've always treated you girls equally." "Equally?" I was shouting now. "When have you ever treated us equally? Name one time, Mom, just one." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. They couldn't name a single instance because there wasn't one. In their minds, they probably had convinced themselves they were fair parents, but reality told a different story. But I was done being the responsible one, done being taken advantage of, done being the family ATM while my sister got all the love, attention, and support. I hung up on them and immediately took action. I canceled the car loan payments I had been making for my parents, payments I'd been covering because they claimed they couldn't afford it. I wasn't going to let them use me any longer. I was cutting them off. Update 1. I didn't realize just how determined they were to make me pay for standing up to them until the next day, when my phone started ringing with calls from various family members and even a few mutual friends. My cousin texted asking why I was being so cruel to my sister. My uncle called to lecture me about family loyalty. A childhood friend messaged asking if I was okay because she'd heard I was having some kind of breakdown. They had started a full-scale smear campaign against me. My mother had apparently been busy calling everyone we knew, spinning a tale of her ungrateful, mentally unstable daughter who was cruelly sabotaging her poor sister out of jealousy. According to the story making the rounds, I had promised to help pay for Emily's trip as a graduation gift, then vindictively pulled the money at the last minute because I was envious of her happiness. It was breathtaking in its audacity and completely false, but people were believing it. Even people who had known me for years were suddenly looking at me differently, questioning my character based on my mother's lies. The manipulation didn't stop there. My parents took to social media, with my mother posting a tearful status about how heartbroken she was that family relationships can fall apart so suddenly. She didn't mention me by name, but everyone knew who she was talking about. The comments were filled with sympathy for her and outrage on Emily's behalf. Emily, not to be outdone, posted a long rant about toxic people who pretend to care about you but then stab you in the back. She included vague references to mental health issues and implied that I was unstable and dangerous. She even went so far as to suggest that she was afraid of what I might do next. It was character assassination, pure and simple, and it was working. People I had considered friends were suddenly distant. Family members who had always been neutral in our disputes were taking sides, and not mine. The narrative was spreading like wildfire, and I was being painted as the villain in a story where I was actually the victim. That evening, I sat in my apartment, surrounded by screenshots of their messages, social media posts, and notes from the calls I'd received. Their manipulation was more extensive and more damaging than I had ever anticipated. They weren't just trying to get money from me anymore, they were actively trying to destroy my reputation, my relationships. I realized I needed to protect myself legally. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore, it was defamation, potential workplace harassment, and attempted fraud with the credit card charge. I had ignored their behavior for too long, making excuses for them because they were family. But family doesn't try to destroy you when you refuse to be exploited. I made a decision that night, one that I knew would change everything. I decided to sue them. I didn't just want my money back, I also wanted justice served. I wanted a legal record of what they had done, something they couldn't twist or manipulate or deny. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer who specialized in family law and financial fraud. I explained the situation, the unauthorized credit card charge, the pattern of financial exploitation. Over the next week, I gathered evidence. I printed out bank statements showing the regular car payments I'd been making for my parents. I collected screenshots of every manipulative text message and social media post. I recorded statements from friends who had received calls from my mother spreading lies about me. The evidence painted a clear picture of a family that had emotionally and financially exploited me for years, and who were now engaged in a coordinated campaign to damage my reputation and livelihoods because I had dared to say no to them. My lawyer started preparing the lawsuit, and I braced myself for the storm that was coming. I knew that once my parents were served with legal papers, their manipulation would reach new heights. They would play the victim more aggressively than ever, portraying me as a monster who was attacking her own family. But for the first time, I didn't care what they said about me. I didn't care what lies they spread or who believed them. I had the truth on my side, documented and indisputable. I had evidence of their behavior, their manipulation, their attempts to damage me, and I had my own strength finally unleashed after years of suppression. The day the papers were served, my phone exploded with notifications. My mother had immediately taken to Facebook to post a tearful video about her mentally disturbed daughter who was breaking her heart. My father called me, yelling and threatening, until I blocked his number. Emily sent a barrage of hateful messages, each one more vicious than the last. But none of it touched me. I was done being their victim. I was done being manipulated, exploited, and gaslit. I was taking back control of my life, one legal document at a time. Update 2. The weeks leading up to our court date were intensely stressful. My lawyer filed a civil suit for the unauthorized use of my credit card, defamation, and emotional distress. We sought compensation for the attempted $25,000 charge, the car payments I'd been making for my parents, totaling over $8,400, and additional damages for their smear campaign. My parents hired their own attorney, an old friend of my father's who specialized in family law. He sent threatening letters claiming I was pursuing a frivolous lawsuit and warning of countersuits if I didn't drop the case. My lawyer assured me this was a standard intimidation tactic designed to make me back down. Meanwhile, my mother intensified her social media campaign, portraying herself as the victim of a vengeful daughter who was tearing the family apart with baseless legal threats. My sister joined in, posting tearful videos about being afraid of my unstable behavior. Former friends sent concerned messages, suggesting I seek therapy or expressing disappointment in my actions. The most painful blow came when my grandmother called, pleading with me to drop the lawsuit. She had always been neutral in family disputes, but now she was thoroughly convinced by my parents' version of events. The call left me hollow and briefly considered giving up the fight. During the discovery phase, my lawyer subpoenaed my parents' financial records, revealing shocking information. While claiming they couldn't afford their car payments, which I had been covering for 2 years, they had spent thousands on luxury items for Emily, designer clothes, weekend getaways, and a spa membership. We also discovered they had taken out a small loan in my name during my college years, using personal information from forms I had signed without my knowledge or consent. As the court date approached, my parents' attorney offered a settlement. They would repay the car loan payments and stop the negative social media campaign if I dropped all claims and signed a non-disclosure agreement. I countered, requesting full repayment of all money I had given them, approximately $15,000, a formal retraction of their defamatory statements, and no non-disclosure agreement. They rejected my terms. On the court day, the proceedings were formal and intimidating. After opening statements, my lawyer presented our evidence, credit card statements, bank records, text messages, and witness testimonials. She showed screenshots of my mother's social media posts and played a recorded call where my father had threatened me. In their defense, my parents claimed I had verbally agreed to help pay for Emily's vacation as a graduation gift, and they had simply misunderstood the arrangement. Under cross-examination, however, my mother admitted they had never directly asked permission to use my credit card and hadn't apologized when confronted. During my testimony, I described the history of financial support I had provided and the shock of discovering the credit card charge. Their lawyer attempted to portray me as cold and uncaring, but I maintained that refusing to have $25,000 stolen from me wasn't heartless but a reasonable boundary. After both sides presented closing arguments, the judge called a recess. Those 2 hours felt interminable. When court resumed, the judge ruled in my favor on all counts. She ordered my parents to repay me $15,273.42 plus interest, and granted a temporary restraining order preventing them from contacting my workplace or posting defamatory content about me. My parents looked stunned. They had clearly expected their misunderstanding defense to work. As we left the courtroom, I felt a complex mix of relief, vindication, and grief, the formal end of what had once been a family relationship. After the court ruling, everything went quiet. My parents complied with the order, depositing the full amount within the 30-day deadline and removing the defamatory social media posts. Initially, I kept expecting them to find some new way to contact me, to restart the cycle of manipulation and guilt. Then something surprising happened. I felt free. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying the weight of my family's expectations on my shoulders. I wasn't worrying about my sister's tantrums or my parents' guilt trips. I didn't have to check my bank account anxiously, wondering if I had enough to cover both my expenses and whatever crisis they had created. I started focusing on my own life. I earned a promotion, started saving money, and put a deposit on a small condo, something I'd never thought possible while supporting my family. I began dating again after years of having no emotional energy for relationships. Most importantly, I began to heal. I found a therapist who specialized in family trauma, and through our sessions, I recognized the patterns of manipulation that had defined my relationships with my parents and sister. I learned that what I had experienced had a name, financial abuse, and that it was more common than I had realized. In the end, walking away wasn't about abandoning my family. It was about reclaiming my life and my future. I've never been more at peace than I am now, living authentically on my own terms, free from the cycles of manipulation and exploitation that had defined so much of my existence. Sometimes the family we're born into isn't the family we deserve. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is to let go of toxic relationships, even when those relationships are with the people who are supposed to love us the most.